Hey everybody, welcome back. So we're going to continue on talking a little bit more, a lot about, actually only about bone, really. And this time we're going to talk about intramembranous ossification. So we've talked about how to form a long bone already, but this one's going to be how to form, like, say, flat bones, for example, like the bones of the skull, or maybe how those sutures close eventually. So let's talk about that now. Give me my pencil. There it is. Okay, it's a step-by-stepper. Here we go. So for intramembranous ossification, what you got to remember is you're actually here. Here's your, like, um, collagen fibers for the most part. This is your scaffolding, because you remember we're not just instantaneous bones, right? We kind of have to have um, like a cartilaginous matrix, or collagen is going to be what is really holding us here, like higher flexibility, for example, in this case. And so, what we have here are what we call, like, the osteoblasts, these teeny tiny, like, blastic cells. So blasts, think of like cells that are baby cells, or at least they want to make baby cells. They are mitotically active. They're undergoing cell division, mitosis. All right. So that means they're going to be bone builders, blast bone builders, right? Think of building that way. And the osteoid proper is the group of them, and the ossification center is the area where they are starting to perform the work of laying down bone, which is basically this: they need to grow, they need to divide, and they need to basically secrete tons and tons of calciums, or in some case high hydroxyapatites and other minerals, in order to make that lovely rigid structure that we are so dependent on. Okay, so here we go. Now here we have our osteoblasts, right? Our bone builder, mitotically active bone babies. Um, and they are starting to build and secrete the central component of this developing bone. Let's say it's in, like, the skull, for example, right? So osteoid is being secreted in these little tiny, like, they look like little vesicles right here. And what ends up happening is they start kind of fusing together, and they calcify, which means that they become mineralized calcium, kind of in a hard, like, rock-like type structure. Okay, so these osteoblasts are building bones, secreting out this calcium, which is going to calcify in a few days from the osteoids. And every once in a while, we get somebody who gets stuck and trapped in there. And so what ends up happening is these osteoblasts start becoming osteocytes. So instead of becoming mitotically active, they realize, oh, I'm stuck in here. I'm surrounded on all sides. I'm just going to maintain the bone. Okay. And that's what they do. Down here, we look at it a little bit further on in the process. So now we're starting to become, in this case, trabecular bone, diploe, woven bone, any of these types of right names, they all mean the same thing. And so we see here's the osteoblasts over here, here's an osteocyte right here, kind of shifting gears. And now we have a blood supply, and that blood supply really accelerates a lot. It means that they are able to start acquiring more calcium and more absorbed minerals right from the bloodstream, and just plop, 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 building it right down, which they darn do. Okay, there they are. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about in this? Right. Okay. All right. So, the difference between what we're looking at here in a flat bone developing, for example, um, and, like, kind of the difference between these is osteoid laying, that's being produced down between embryonic blood vessels, results in this kind of, like, messy looking little network, instead of that concentric lamellae that we were seeing in those proper osteons, of the trabeculae. And that's how we get that woven bone phenotype, right? It kind of moves in networks, but it's essentially the same idea. It's still trapping all of these osteoblasts, now becoming osteocytes, in a lacuna, which they work to maintain. Oop, let's make it smaller. There it is. Okay. All right. There we are. Where are you going? Just stay right there. Okay. All right, look at this. We're finishing up the job right here. So as you can see, we now have, like, this thick, compact bone that starts happening on either side, right? Yes, and then we still have all of the diploe here in the middle, which can be uh, used to store and or to house the red marrow, right? So that's a blood making component, very, very important. Outside, we still have the periosteum, which actually becomes thinner over time. Osteoblasts, just kind of finishing up the job here on the perimeter. Um, so in the inside component, this like medulla, if you will, what ends up happening is it becomes a lot thicker. This the spongy bone or the diploe. Um, and the blood vessels themselves become a higher network, right? There just becomes a lot more of them, and that's how we start laying down and housing all of that red marrow, right? Which is, of course, absolutely essential to maintaining the blood supply because that's where the blood supply comes from, right? Right. Especially in the beginning. Okay. Yep, that's it. And so this is how that's how the flap bones are made. This is intramembranous ossification. This is also what happens in the skull as the sutures close, for example. It's a membrane, right? And it eventually ossifies. And that is like the nature of that. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful. I hope you're out there somewhere having a great day. Bye bye.